Welcome to this edition of Morpheus Minute. In this video, I'd like to discuss ongoing day 2 operations for your existing environment after you've stood up Morpheus. And I want to touch on day 2 operations, backups, logging, and monitoring. So here you're looking at the dashboard and I can see my existing summary of instances, monitoring, logs, and backups. I can see my instances here, and if I scroll down, I get some additional information around monitoring, logs, and backups as well. And as you can see, I have no backups today. So from here, I can go to any of my instances. So let's just select one of my instances, and I want to show the day 2 operations that I have. So I actually automatically see a status and health information around my application. So status, health, availability, maximum CPU, memory, and storage. And here, as an owner of this application, I have a day 2 actions menu where I can execute a number of different type of tasks. And you can see here it's a very healthy list. Great, I can do day 2 operations. But since we want to talk also about logging and monitoring and backups, I can scroll down and I can also, on that same application, I can click on logs and I can see my aggregated logs here, and I can see if I have a backup. I don't have a backup configured, but I do have the ability here to add a backup schedule to this machine so it can get backed up on a regular basis. Excellent. Now let's jump into backups. So here I can see a quick summary of my environment, how many backups I have configured, the success rate. I can see here that I have 2 that have failed in the last 7 days, and I can see the amount of storage that these backups have taken in the last 7 days as well. Just before we jump into the details, let's go into integration. The one thing I'd like to point out is we integrate into a lot of the common backup technologies like Avamar, Rubrik, Veeam, and Zerto, in addition to Commvault as well. So you would integrate your backup solutions into Morpheus, and then we have the ability to leverage those as part of the provisioning process as well as the ongoing day 2 management of your existing environment. We can also see all the different backup jobs that exist in the environment. I can actually go ahead and take a look at those backups and get a little bit more details around that, and I can add additional backups here if I choose to. And I can also get a historical view of all the backups that have taken place, succeeded, failed, succeeded, as you can see here, and I can take a look at any restores. And in my case here, I don't have any restores. Now let's jump into logging. I already showed how we can actually look at logs on a specific application or a specific instance or service that I own. But here, this logging menu provides me an aggregated view of all the logs in my environment. This is excellent if I want to go in and troubleshoot and take a look at the larger environment, if you will. Another good thing to be able to do here is go in and specify a date or a specific time frame to look at logs. And I have the ability to do things like look at a specific log level. And as you can see here, now I'm looking specifically at the errors logs within my environment, and I can go in and get some additional detail there. Now let's jump into monitoring. We can monitor applications and other services within your environment here. The status tab gives me a summary view of what's going on in my environment, so I can see the status, the availability, response time, any open incidents, and I can take a look at my applications and checks here, as well as open incidents and recent activities down on the bottom. Great. What we do here is we define checks, so we can go in and create a number of different types of checks. So there's different application and services checks that we can perform and create here. And again, a very long list of things that we can do. And we create those checks. Once we create the checks, we can actually group them together to be able to do multiple checks as part of a group. Then we would go ahead and assign those checks to an application. So here, for example, I can actually take a look at this application and look at all the assigned checks or a group of checks that are assigned to it. So now we're actually tracking that application and provide you all the details of that application. So we've touched on apps, checks, and groups. Now, based on the severity of the check that we're performing, we can actually come back and raise incidents. So you can see here, I have some incidents. I also have the ability to create incidents myself here. Lastly, I just want to touch on being able to create alert rules. So we can create alert rules here, and here's an example of a rule where we would provide a name, we would provide the severity that we want it to trigger on, and then we can add from all the applications that are defined, all the checks that are defined, and all the groups that are defined. I can add those to be checked, and I can decide who I want to notify and how. So this now will notify that individual when this triggers. Who are some of the individuals that we can notify? We can actually define these in context. You're probably wondering, well, what about if I want to integrate into existing ITSM service management tools? So let's go here to Administration and Integrations. If we add a new integration and scroll down to the ITSM section, you can see we can also integrate with ServiceNow, Sharewell, and Remedy. Let's jump back to our operations dashboard. Very quickly, I'd just like to summarize that we touched on the ability to do day 2 operations for any instances and applications that I own. We touched on being able to perform backups and integrate your existing backup solutions into Morpheus. We touched on logging and how we automatically aggregate the logs for the applications and instances that you have. And we touched on monitoring and how we can create checks and assign them to application, and how we can raise alerts against those checks as well. And we lastly touched on how to integrate ITSM solutions. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you and have a great day.